once again to another episode of Where in the CPC is Rev Z. And today I am joined with Elder Donnie Tomes and Elder Terrell Woosley. And gentlemen, where am I at today?
Well, you're at Mount Pleasant, Cumberland Presbyterian Church, and Terry, you tell them what city we're in.
Well, we're in Big Reedy community. It's in the northwest corner of Edmonson County. The church address is actually Caneyville.
Okay, so Caneyville, remind me what county we're in again?
Edmonson.
Edmonson County.
Well,
okay.
just for clarification, this is Big Reedy.
Okay, so this is the Big Reedy area. So if you're driving down here, you're going to Big Reedy.
That's right.
And I tell you what, when my husband and I were on the way here, what an amazing view. And up and down and all around, and I was like, we're gonna get there someday. It's amazing how far out you are, but man, you all have a fantastic view.
Yes.
So this church, now, when were you all formed? When did this church begin?
April 4th, 1887. It was in existence before, but that's when it became a Cumberland Presbyterian Church, and that's Cumberland Presbyterian ever since.
Okay. Who were some of your founding members of this church? I'm sure you must have had some important people here.
Well, they were important in the community.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know that they were world famous or anything.
No.
We speak of them sometimes as they were. You know?
Sure.
Well, now, I have a little list here. G.W. Woosley, founding elder. Alfred Huff, Joseph Woosley, Anderson Tomes, T.J. Woosley, and
That's it.
that's it.
Okay. Now, was this church, when they founded it in 1887, was there a church building that sat here?
There was a church, a log church. If you notice up here at the top of the hill cemetery, that we've got a flagpole, and the log church sat right there.
Okay.
Pretty close to it,
Okay.
from what I understand.
So it started as a log building.
Yes.
And then what happened to it? Where did it move to?
Well,
The church that we call the old church sat right in front of this persimmon tree right here in the front yard.
yeah,
Okay.
and faced toward the schoolhouse.
Okay,
Yeah.
towards the schoolhouse.
Mhm.
So that was an interesting thing. I was taking some video and pictures of the schoolhouse outside, so that's kind of neat. So was that part of the church then too? Did the
Well,
church help run the school?
Now, I'm not an expert on that, but Terrell, wasn't that part of the moral act, or wasn't this ground?
Yes,
given?
the ground was donated by a Arthur Bow Nash for church and school. And there's probably an acre or a little over.
And the school,
Is the acreage?
acre and so much here, but now the school's probably closer to 3 to 5, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I'm not exactly sure about that. It's sort of a conundrum in a way. You know, generally when you don't have school there anymore, the school board tears it down and sells it, but that ground and that building belong to the community.
okay.
That's why it's still
So
standing.
that's why it's still there.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Amen.
Okay. So now then, when was this church building built?
1960.
Okay, 1960. Very good. And yet, see, you guys have a beautiful pavilion out back. That was gorgeous. When was that added on?
A couple years ago.
Yeah,
right?
about 2 years ago.
Okay. So you've done a little bit of expansion.
Oh, yeah. Well, this basement, hon, what do you think of that?
That was gorgeous. I took extra video for you ladies that are watching because I know you're going to be jealous of that kitchen
Yes.
downstairs. So they got a little extra shots of those kitchens just for them.
I think we could rent that on the weekends, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's really beautiful down there.
Absolutely. It was definitely a gorgeous setup. If anybody's looking to remodel, call these guys,
That's a
figure out what's going on.
tribute to the members, and actually the ladies had a lot to do with that, how we did it and so on, and donations and things of that nature.
Sure.
It's really amazing.
Sure.
Actually, the church as it looks today, you would hardly recognize it if you went back to the day it was built.
Okay.
So we've constantly remodeled, improved, we think.
Sure, sure.
The lights are different, the carpet's different, the seats are different, the heating is different.
So always trying to improve to accommodate and make sure that everybody's taken care
We
of.
didn't have padded seats originally.
No, they were,
I thought I remembered that being.
these are the original seats. These are the original seats, but they were solid wood.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So as we've gotten older, we've gotten softer. Is that what we're saying?
I
there?
think so,
Okay, I was
yes.
just
Well, I
checking.
enjoy it more, I'll put it that way.
Fair enough. Well, since you guys have been around so long, you must have some interesting stories, some different people maybe that have come through or been a part of this congregation. Do you have any stories or interesting points of history you'd like to share with our viewers today?
Well, I'll tell you something that's been handed down to me that I didn't live through. I've lived through a lot of them, but one of the crises in the church happened in the early 1900s. We had a very outstanding man in the church. He was an elder and he clerked the session, and he had some boys, and one of them just didn't turn out real well. He drank a lot, and he let his family starve, and the night riders, as they called them, came through one night and pulled him out of his house and gave him a good whipping. And it made the old man mad. His son was perfect, of course.
Right, sure.
And so he left his beloved old church, and I have a letter. It's on file in Memphis of the letter he wrote to the church resigning. He
Wow.
was going to the Baptist church, and he talked about how he hated to leave his beloved old church, but he did. And that's the only time that I know of that we got to the crisis point where some people left.
Right.
And we've had a couple little squabbles since, but the members have been men of character.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
And they had their disagreements and fought one another tooth and toenail, but they never left the church. And after it's all over, well, it's just like it never happened.
Right, right.
I mean, and that's the way it should be.
Sure, absolutely. Should be able to work through our differences and come
Right.
back to a consensus.
None of them ever quit church. They'd come, sit, sing together and everything.
Right.
And then go to court the next week.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
But
That's awesome.
But now they were men of honor, and church came first.
And they took it seriously.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, I mean, it was a life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It wasn't just something they did as a pastime on a weekend. It was their life.
Sure, sure.
I think here's a good example of one of those men of renown, I call them. And, actually, Terrell and I looked it up, Terrell, I believe it's 1974.
I think so.
That we were elected elders. And she asked me a while ago how long I've been a member, and I said, well, I've been an elder 47 years. I can't remember that. But the progression and the growth of the church has always been influenced by strong men on the elder board. I think, when we went on, we had a strong group, and we've had some excellent additions. And, they just way outdistance we two. They travel good.
Sure, sure.
And they can speak in any crowd. They're really talented. Paul Woosley and Paul Forster is who I'm talking about. They're excellent young men. And we've, of course, had others through the year that's done a good job. Now, of course, both of our fathers were elders. We actually served on the board with both of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So pass that down through the generation, that importance of how much church
We
means.
didn't think much about father, son at the time.
No.
Right?
But we actually did, I'm sure, yeah.
Sure. Now I have to ask, there are a lot of Woosleys, a lot of names that are listed out here on the headstones. And just because I love Miss Louisa Woosley,
Yeah.
do you all have a connection to Miss Louisa?
Well, she pastored here for about 9 years in the early 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a
She was a layman, but she married into the Woosley family, and her husband was a distant relative to everybody.
Wow.
I noticed in the minutes I read yesterday, I think it was, one of the first minutes that after she was presiding over, and she gave a pastor report, and there had been 23 saved, and 20 had been added to the church, and I believe it was 40 pastoral visits she'd made.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
that's a pretty good.
Yes.
That's a
some
pretty
good numbers.
First little.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and make a little more sense of it. She had preached, I believe she said 12 sermons
Wow.
at
Wow.
the church here.
That's amazing.
That is.
That is really amazing.
Good figures for that day, even more amazing today.
Sure. Absolutely.
I can tell you a little story about Sister Louisa. It was before 1900. My grandfather was a rowdy man, young man, never
Terrell,
professed.
Don't talk about my.
Never professed faith till he was in his late 20s. But Sister Louisa held a revival here. And there were several rowdy boys. And they came for the show, woman preacher. Going to come for the show. And my grandfather has told me this a number of times, so he said him and his brother and some of the Huffs and Donnie's ancestry, and they all come in, and he found out pretty soon it wasn't a show, it was serious. And he said after the sermon, my Sister Woosley come back and said, "George," said, "I know that you don't care." Said, "You just soon go to hell as anything." But said, "Look around you." Said, "You're the ringleader of all these boys." Said, "You going to take all them with you?" And he told me, he called my name and said, "Now that got me to thinking."
Right.
And said, I headed for the altar, and said about half of them followed me and half of them run out the back door. But said, before the week is out, he called me, said, before the week is out, Turk, said, we rounded them every one up.
Wow.
Amen.
Wow. That's amazing. If
And
only
he
we could
was-
do that today,
Yeah.
you know? That would be amazing.
And he was elected an elder in about 1904, I think.
Wow. Okay. So really turned his life around.
It did.
Amazing.
He was well, anybody in the community tell you he was not a man to speak, but he didn't have to.
Right.
He was solid.
Sure. Amazing. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. And hang on, viewers, for just one moment. We're going to bring in Reverend Greg Bowen next. All right, everyone, welcome back. And this time I'm joined by Reverend Greg Bowen. Greg, for everybody around here. Greg, thank you for letting me come and visit your church today and just taking some time with me and sharing your elders with me. They were amazing. I loved it. I'm sure our viewers loved it as well. So our viewers have already got a chance to see what your church looks like. So your physical space here in the sanctuary is beautiful. It's just very open and just very bright and welcoming. How do you see your physical space here in the sanctuary? What kind of worship does it lean to? Is it more contemporary, more traditional? What do you guys do here?
Sure. And first of all, thank you guys for coming and
Absolutely.
even considering us to be part of this. And thanks for being here today. And what a beautiful day that we've got
Oh, man.
to shoot this video.
Yes.
And we could have done it outside. Couldn't
We really could
You
have.
know?
It is beautiful this
But
afternoon.
yes, whenever you walk into the Mount Pleasant sanctuary, you can't help but feel things
Yes.
and feel good things.
Yeah.
And it is an open, what you would call open format or open
Yeah.
floor plan.
Yeah.
But it has changed over the years, so they say. All right?
Right,
Now,
sure.
it hasn't changed how the setup goes as far as we are today.
Sure.
There's still choir space. There's choir space on both sides, as you can see. But those spaces are very, very traditional in this type of sanctuary that
Yeah.
you would run across in a lot of the churches in this area. But here it's just different.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's pretty special. And this church has always been known for years and years and years, way before me, okay, that it was known for its singing.
Okay.
Yes. So when people whenever you mention Mount Pleasant, Cumberland Presbyterian Church from Edmonson County,
Right.
they say, oh, they're such good singers.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's the tradition, and that leads to the choir lofts that we see
Sure.
each side. And both sides have been, and I've seen lots of pictures to where the choir used to be turned the other way.
Right. Yep.
And
Yep.
then as things went along, they decided, hey, we would be better off if our voices were going out toward the congregation.
Sure.
So
Sure.
all of those things change with time and different people. So it was very, very good. And you know what? The first Sunday that I was here, there were people singing in the choir all the way from 5 years old to, I'm not going to guess that,
Right,
the
yeah.
oldest. But
Okay.
but you're all welcome
Wow.
to be a part of it.
Wow. So beautiful. And I remember the last time I was here, the singing was just beautiful. And you're right, you do have a different feel when you walk into this.
You really
church.
do, and it's welcoming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
And not trying to get ahead of some of the questions that
No,
you
you're
have
good. Yeah.
lined out or whatever, but whenever I was asked to come and be a part of this congregation, they made me feel as welcome as I would be if I'd have been ministering for years and years and years and years.
Wow.
And that is another part about this Mount Pleasant congregation
Yeah.
and their elders. They have taken under their care so many new ministers like myself, so many new people under the calling that haven't always stayed Cumberland Presbyterian. Okay?
Sure.
But guess what? They're still winning people to Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And you know, we have to admire that.
Absolutely.
And if they got their start here,
Yeah.
and they can spread that, you know, the gospel tells us that we are to go out and make disciples of others.
Yes.
And there are so many names that I can't even begin to name. And I bet you even our elders now would forget a few. But there are a lot of people that started out maybe just as in regular congregate
Yeah.
that now are filling pulpits, are ordained ministers in different
Wow.
organizations and
Yeah.
different denominations,
Sure.
and
Sure.
still winning people to Jesus Christ.
What a testament.
It really
for
is.
this church here and the
And
people here.
yeah, and they accepted me like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and they came with no predestined to say, okay, now how long are you going to stay?
Right.
Or what are you wanting from us? None of that comes. It comes with the love of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And that's what church is supposed to be.
Absolutely. And that also, I'm sure, impacts the longevity of this church, considering how rural this church is.
Absolutely.
The longevity of it, I'm sure, is
Absolutely.
impacted by this.
You have to look back into the history and the other small churches. There are other churches around of all other denominations.
Mhm.
And during this time, there were a lot of community churches, and you became as one. That's where that family went, or that's where,
Sure.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
But there were certain times that all of those churches came together for, like whenever we have homecoming or decoration day, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it,
Yeah.
the second Sunday of June.
Okay.
You will have Baptist, Church of Christ, all sorts of
Just coming
denominations
together.
that come back because they either had grandma, grandpas are buried here or went to church
Sure.
here, or it maybe started here, different families out of this entire community.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, with you guys being able to pull together, and the fact that this church is so rural, again, beautiful drive coming in here, but it's really out
It
in the
is.
middle of nowhere. How does that impact your ministry, and how does that impact some of the missions maybe that this church works on? How does that impact that?
Sure. And to that point, guess what? Whenever I came and started filling the pulpit here, that was one of my questions.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Because you drive quite a ways to
Absolutely.
come here, don't
Absolutely,
you? Yeah.
I do, about an hour.
Okay. Yeah.
And whenever, at the time, I had a young son myself.
Right.
How are we going to do that? But the church has always had youth in it. It's always had people in it that were invested. Okay?
Yeah.
Not only just that, it was a church in the, yes, it is rural,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a place in God's kingdom for rural churches.
Amen.
And
Absolutely.
they serve that purpose.
Sure.
The people that are here, they deserve Jesus Christ just the same as the ones in the suburbs that we're trying to win,
Absolutely.
or the urban community that we're trying to win.
Mhm.
And yes, but it is concerning, how long can we go?
Mhm.
How long can the church sustain itself?
Mhm.
It will sustain itself as long as the people that are in it are strong.
Amen.
And I think you can see the interview that you did earlier.
Yeah.
Our church is strong.
Yes.
And not because of me, not because of any pastor. It goes back to the elders. The elders and the leadership and the congregants of this church, they're the ones that lead it.
Mm-hmm.
This church can go without a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Apostle Paul, whenever he was traveling in his different missionary journeys, he started a lot of churches,
He sure did.
but he didn't have to stay.
Right. Right.
They picked it up and kept going.
Yeah.
That's Mount Pleasant Cumberland Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
They can keep going, and they will keep going. Now, will they ever be 100? I pray and hope that they will one day,
Right.
but they don't have to be.
Right. Right. So with the size of your church and the fact that it's rural, what kind of missions or what kind of outreach is this church currently working on or involved with?
Absolutely. And some of the obvious are, very involved with our own denomination.
Right.
And something that I'm proud of, and I'm not, and you have to be careful with the word proud because you
Right.
become pride.
Right.
But through pandemic times,
Mm-hmm.
through tough times,
Mm-hmm.
they always pay their OUOs. They always pay their dividends. Okay? And it's always above and beyond that 10%.
Amen.
And what an example that they set for their fellow
Yes.
people that they worship with.
Sure,
Okay?
sure.
So with that being said, it doesn't just stop with our own denomination. They take care of the community. If there's a need there, they're willing to step up and help.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say that there's just monies laying around everywhere, but God has always provided a way.
Wow.
And some of the things that lately that we've done, we're helping a young lady that is currently working in the crew ministry
Okay.
in Nashville,
Okay.
and she is winning young people to Christ.
Amen.
And that's above and beyond that, helping with that. We help quite a few different missionaries
Okay.
above and beyond what we're called to do.
Mhm.
And that's just one example of lately.
Mhm.
The last 2 or 3 years, we've done Operation Christmas Child,
Okay.
and through Samaritan's Purse.
Right.
And whatever you believe in that,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that opportunity reaches a lot of people that we
Yes.
would never do
Right.
without financial support. And last year we sent 100 shoe boxes
Wow.
overseas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's huge.
Off of a small congregation.
Sure.
Typically and since the pandemic, we averaged 35,
Right.
30 people a
Right.
Sunday.
Sure.
But before that, there may be Sundays we get to 50,
Right.
might be Sundays we're 20.
Right. Yep.
But you know what? They're always faithful.
Right. And just giving constantly.
And not just monetary. They give of their time, they give of their ears and of their wisdom, and they have a lot to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just talking to your elders, it's obvious their love,
Absolutely.
care, and compassion for this church and its community, and continuing to minister and to lead, guide, and direct those that are coming in underneath them, behind them, to take care of it.
And it shows on the property too.
Sure.
The cemetery that surrounds the church, the upkeep of the church, the constantly, hey, how can we improve? What do we need to do here?
Yeah.
What all of those things, always open-minded, willing to hear, and if it's something that can help out in Bible school or any other project that's going on, they're like, yeah, let's just do it.
Yeah.
God will provide.
Amen. Amen. That's beautiful. So, Greg, with all of that and knowing that you have a small congregation out in the middle of nowhere,
Sure.
what are your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations? What are you looking at? What does Mount Pleasant look like 5 years from now?
I'll be honest with you. I'm all the time asking myself that, because ultimately I feel like I'm responsible for that. Okay?
Sure.
And my elders are responsible for that. And we as a team, we have a responsibility to our congregation. And if we're not always looking ahead, so let's play the game just a little bit.
Yeah, what if?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a great song, What If, right now. What if there was no me tomorrow?
Yeah.
What if we had to replace an elder tomorrow?
Right.
What are we always talking about on that? And those have to be at the back of our minds, because those things will happen one day.
Right.
And what I would hope that the congregation is strong enough there and strong enough from within, and I know that they are, that they have a type of vision that says we're going to be okay, and that through prayer. It's funny that you chose us to sit at this altar. And do you know where a lot of the decisions are made in this church?
I hope right here.
It's made right here.
Yeah.
And and let me tell you, from the time I was born, I was in church. So I don't have a great big testimony of I fell away. I don't.
Right.
But I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
But you know, I didn't know how to pray until I came to be a part of this church. Because they said, whenever you want from God, and whenever you have something that's on you, you go to the altar. And they taught me how to pray right here at this 7-foot altar.
Wow.
And not be ashamed.
Yeah.
Not be ashamed, because sometimes we view an altar or calling, an invitation or whatever, sometimes of what did they do wrong, or what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
But
sure.
But here, these elders, this congregation, this church taught me, hey, how about starting out at the altar and turning it over there, that you don't have to worry about going and asking for forgiveness, because you're heading it all off in the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Wow.
And what a beautiful congregation that this is.
Yeah.
I don't know why God chose the path for me to end up here. But in this path, we wish we had enough time to tell that story. But this path started many, many years ago with me being friends of someone here in this church. Matter of fact, Elder Terrell Woosley, and that's how it all started.
Okay.
And we didn't even know that one day we would be worshiping together.
Wow.
But we do.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing story.
Absolutely.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So hopes, dreams, aspirations that this church is just gonna.
It's gonna keep going because they have family that is still Caneyville.
Yeah.
Okay. But we have to be conscious. We have to be constantly in prayer of saying, Lord, lead and guide us a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have to be asking.
Yeah.
There are a lot of churches that quit asking.
Yes.
Become complacent.
Yeah. Yes.
One of these days, I would like to retire, but I'll never ask to retire from being a servant of Jesus.
Amen. What a beautiful testimony and a beautiful just a beautiful church, the feeling in here, the testimony of the church itself. And
Absolutely.
Just knowing that God is leading, guiding, directing every step that this church is in. It's beautiful. Greg, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for this awesome opportunity, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of Where in the CPC is Rev Z.